Hello everyone and welcome to the next Messer tutorial. We're roughly halfway through this project in which we're going through Hans Leckhusner's Kunst und Zettel im Messer and going through it chapter by chapter and then trying to take one important lesson on fencing from each and every one of them. This time we'll be looking at Nachrayssen, and this is a bit of a peculiar Hauptstück or chapter because the previous ones tend to either focus on solving a problem with using winding actions or using Langenort or long point with a thrust to create threat. This is different. This is very much focused on parry riposte actions, and it's very uncharacteristic of Leckhusner's system therefore. But there are some reasons why you would want to do that, some situations in which this might be a good solution. So let's have a look at those situations in particular. Leckhusner himself mentions that Nachrayssen is very useful against so-called Freifechter, which could be traveling fencers going from one Fechtschule to another. Or perhaps it could be a reference to members of the Freifechter Guild, although we have no records of that existing during Leckhusner's lifetime. The kind of fencing that these Freifechter are supposed to do is making really big, wide parries and very large cuts. And this is a bit of a problem, because it's very difficult to force people who fence like this to engage you in a bind, and usually Langenort isn't very effective against this either, because quite simply they will just step back, make the cut back at you, and if you're not prepared for it, they have a very good chance of hitting you. Problematic, so what do you do with that? The idea of Nachrayssen is basically to do the same thing, but better. Be a bit more intelligent about it, have a bit more of a plan, have perhaps a better preparation than your opponent. So before we do that, first we kind of just need to get good at this parry riposte kind of game. One way I like to do that is with a game I like to call Messer Ping Pong. You get yourself a partner, both of you have a messer, and then one of you starts by making a cut. To keep it simple, let's just stick with cuts from above right now, so we have the option of a left cut from above and a right cut from above. Now, you get cut out, you try and parry that either with a straight regular parry or with a hanging parry, and from there you immediately riposte, make a cut back, either from the right side above or from the left side above. Now, your partner again parries riposte, and you get this infinite loop of parry riposte actions. You get a lot of repetitions in this way, and it's a very good way to practice your parry riposte actions. However, do be cautious. You'll start noticing, especially here when Christian and I do it, if you do this for too long, your footwork will sometimes start to suffer a bit. So if you notice that, just break it off, reset, and try again. It's better to break it off a bit more often and have good footwork than just have endless things where your footwork becomes non-existent. So, if you have gotten enough repetitions of the parry riposte actions, it's time to start moving to Nachrayssen and see how we can use that to defeat these Freifechter. I think the biggest lesson, the biggest takeaway from Nachrayssen is that if you manage to get your preparation for the action and the timing absolutely correct, even against the fastest opponent, you'll still be able to get a window of opportunity that's big enough to land your own cut. If either of these two isn't there, it's usually safer to not commit, because then you'll probably be walking into a trap. How do you do that? Let's have a look at the technique Nachrayssen itself. First part is preparation. The preparation is very important because why these Freifechter are so good at what they do is that they basically draw you in, and once they have drawn you in, it's very easy for them to make a parry and a quick riposte. This is what makes them successful. So your preparation is to confuse that type of action. You're going to telegraph that you're going to be in a certain spot. Your opponent is going to want to cut at that spot, but you're not going to be there. So what I'm showing here is I have my left foot in front. I basically pretend that I'm going to commit to a cut, but I only make a half step and immediately go back. This means that there's going to be a cut from my opponent coming towards my head, and once that cut has missed, I'm in the ideal situation to try and do Nachrayssen, because Nachrayssen works when people miss their initial cut. When that happens, they have a short recovery time, and during that recovery time, I jump forward and try and hit them. Sometimes I might hit them without a jump, but usually people tend to run backwards instantly once they've noticed they missed, so loading yourself up for a good jump is actually helpful. You see the difference here? My partner now does not jump, it's very easy for me to hit. If they do start running back, I really need to adjust and make a pretty big jump in order to hit them. The good news though is, if they're running back, their recovery is going to be slower, so you will still have the window of opportunity to hit them. So this is how we see that preparation and timing come together. But what happens if you think that these come together, but your opponent is still fast enough to parry? What's going to happen then is basically you're going to get into this infinite loop of parrying or posting, and sometimes you might win, but the problem with the Thrive Vector is they're very good at it, so there's a very real chance they might beat you at that. So there's a couple of fun little tricks. One thing to do is to turn your original cut into a bit of a vinker. So check out the vinker tutorial if you want to learn how to do that. It basically defeats their hanging parry quite well, and even a straight parry is not safe from a vinker. So once you've played around with this technique a little bit, I think it's a good idea to move into a sparring exercise. And that could look something like this. Say your partner has to begin with the messer above their head in something like a steer position. And they're allowed to start attacking you as soon as they think you're going to be attacking them. So as soon as you're within range. And they're allowed to keep attacking with cuts from above until either you hit them or they hit you. What could then end up happening, for instance, is that you approach them and you have a good preparation, you see an opening, and you land a direct attack before your partner realizes that they should be parrying that. Great, well done. It could also happen, for instance, that your partner does realize that you're going to be attacking and attacks you and hits you. Well, then you messed up a little bit, reset, try again. If, for instance, that same situation happens, so you make a preparation, but you're out of there on time, you have created opportunity, you have created time for yourself to try and land that initial hit. So, by all means, go for it. But, of course, it might also happen that your partner, being the very skilled Thrive Vector that they are capable of parrying that attack and then making a riposte. In which case, you should try one of the solutions that we were talking about. Either infinitely trying to parry riposte and just be better at it, or perhaps try vinker. Now, this exercise, doing that a lot, gives you the opportunity to really practice these parry riposte actions. They're quite difficult for Messer, but I do think they're quite worthwhile because from time to time, whether that's in friendly sparring at your club or at tournaments, you're just going to run into this person. You're going to run into the Thrive Vector, and they're very difficult to force to play your game. So instead, perhaps analyze what they do, why it works, and come up with your own plan for using preparation and timing to be better at that. And I think this is the place that Nachrayssen has in their Kudos system. So people who really do not want to play the game of control, well, play the game of parry riposte, but just be smarter about it than they are. So I hope this was useful to you. Let me know what you think about it. If you have any questions, of course, post them in the comments. And otherwise, I'll see you for the next one.